I will record, I will share, and we will get started. Yeah. Project. Let's go to make sure. Okay. So, everyone's good? Everyone can hear and see me, correct? Let's always get started with that. Sweet. Click for attendance. Awesome. Cool. So, what are we in? Week 6? Week 6. Wow, more than halfway through. And 5 more weeks left. And for this week, we are going to be covering hooks. I'm sure everyone has heard of hooks prior to me slacking out the homework reading assignments, which included reading on hooks. But I'm sure you all must have heard hooks. Hooks is like the thing everyone's talking about. And it kind of represents how React is evolving, and it continues to evolve. And for good reason, right? I mean, Facebook is trying to handle all that data and billions of people accessing an app that's kind of new, right? The fact that that was the first app where so many people decided to hit at the same time, rendering the same kind of content. So components were a good fit. And now they need to manage other things that are coming up in regards to such a large application. That's their attempt at kind of the next gen of React. And I'm sure in a year from now, by the end of next year, there'll be something else. There's always going to be something else with React. I'm just going to mute everybody. Okay. So we're going to be covering hooks. Let's go with the agenda. Hooks. Oh, I thought I put hooks here. React hooks. Yeah. Attendance. I'll do a quick homework review. I think I'm going to assume you probably agree. Like this homework was by far the easiest one, was it? Right? Megan's like, yeah, almost like that wasn't even hard. That was just like a lab for homework. Yes, wasn't all that hard. And I did slack out a second like refactored one that took kind of what you know already, and I just applied it. You know, importing something, importing the links themselves as JSON and then looping over them just to give you more practice. If it was too simple, then layer on the things that you know would add just a bit more complexity. Okay, so we'll just do a quick homework review. React hooks, and then we'll just exit tickets. And the main goal is to kind of explain what hooks do and how we use them in functional components. Okay, and we'll practice. There'll be a bunch of practice today too. So for the homework, take a look here. For the homework, I'm just going to open up. I'm opening up the solutions that I slacked out, and again, pretty basic stuff. Here's an app, and the app has nav with a few links to them. These are our links, and because there are associated routes, any click on one of these links will call the corresponding route, right? I mean, this link to links to the default. We go here, easy enough, right? The things that are kind of, I would say, missing from this are what's missing from our route that we kind of implemented last week.
Switches.
Yeah. So it's missing like a switch, right? So we could go ahead and add the switch. We could move the exact path down. So there's just like one thing there outside of that. And the other thing was passing down data to a child component. That's also something that we did. And instead of using component, we used another keyword. Does anybody remember the keyword?
Render?
Render, right? Render was the keyword. So I'm going to open up the refactored solution so we can just take a look to see how I just kind of took it to the next level. Okay. I'm going to go to app again, and app now. Oh, you know what? I didn't add the switch. Should have added the switch. Didn't add the switch. So adding the switch is really easy, right? Just switch, and there we go, right? That was easy enough. I could move this now to the bottom, get rid of the exact keyword, and they should all still work, right? Okay. Once again, the switch was meant to solve the problem of multiple routes being matched and rendering those routes that all meet the same criteria or meet one thing in the criteria, / boom, you're in. Come to the party kind of thing. So we use the switch to do that. You don't need the exact keyword when you're using switch unless you have the other one. What was the other one to deal with routes that we don't, or we're handling the user changing it to a route that doesn't exist? What was that called? Redirect, right? So I would have to import redirect, do redirect. I think it was it 2. I forgot what the redirect was. What is it, 2? I'm gonna have to actually take a look.
I think it was 2, yeah.
It was 2, and we had to tell it where to go, or just redirect. So we're listening to. You know what? Let me quickly go back here. iStocks. Just gonna take a look at the iStocks again. It's kind of stuff I don't configure every day. Go in, I'm like, let me add this stuff. So even we didn't do it here either. Oh, okay. I think it's redirect 2, and redirect 2, and we have to tell it where to go. We want it to redirect. I think we're going to listen to specific paths, but let me just see. If I open this up, take a quick look and see. All right, these all work. All right, cool. Contacts, let me see. Right, takes me right back to the homepage. So if I'm on contacts and I do contacts, redirects me right back to the homepage. Okay. So that was the other one, redirect. And then I also just decided to import some data. I created a data JSON file, and I imported those links, those specific routes, and the names of them. So these links up here, I just decided to import, and decided to import some content for the procedure page. You didn't have to do this. I'm just saying, if you wanted to import data and loop over it, you could make it dynamic, right? If I can import the data, then I can make an API call and get data and emulate the same functionality. If this is the structure that I would be importing via an API, well, if I hard code it, then it works. Then I know all I got to do is import it, and then it should work. And I just imported it right here, import data as JSON. And then I passed it, I looped, or I passed it to a header component. So I passed all of the links, which was this array. I passed it to a header, and then I just looped over the header and created links. That's really all I did. Loop over it. I mean, last week we created a main and a header, and this assignment really didn't have you do that. So I just did that, and then I call links, and links are created, right? I mean, that was easy enough. And when you create the link, I need the key. I need to define 2, and I'm using the d.route, which represents the elements route, and it'll return this. And then you also need to see the name of it, right? And so I got to put the name of the thing. And so I was able to do that. The next thing that I was doing is I wanted to use the render keyword, and render is how you call a component and pass down props simultaneously, or you're using render so that you could pass down props. And so procedures is what is the component that I'm going to render, and I'm passing down procedures, okay? And I call procedures from here. So I'm using object destructuring to pull out the procedures object from data, right? So if we take a look at this, you would see this object is returned, right? That's the return of importing, and procedures is a key, and it has an object, and that object has two key value pairs. One's just for text and one's for an array of things. So where am I? Here. I decide to pass it to the procedures component. If I go to procedures, I then do the same thing. I use object destructuring to elicit those keys and create variables simultaneously, get those values. I map over procedures and I create LIs, and the procedures are really just these. And then the info, I don't really have to do much. It was just text. I just import the text. That's it. Okay. Once again, I was just kind of messing around with it, saying, hey, where could we take this and how much farther? I didn't do anything with like history and passing down the route information. I didn't do any of that. But yeah, just wanted to show you, as you're building things out, if you start small and you get it working, take it to the next thing. Like, what could I do next to apply what I've learned in class? Okay. Did anyone have any questions on the assignment? Yeah, I'll leave it open for a minute, but yeah. Okay. That was what I was thinking. I didn't think there were going to be many questions. So good. If you have a question, you could always add it to the questions. You know, just have a 10, 15 questions. If you have a question about anything, just add it there. I'll take a look at it. Okay. And still the bonus material. See a few more of trying their hands at traffic light. Memory game, still available. Always something to do. Okay. Always going to give you something to do. Both of those solutions, by the way, I posted here too. So this was the standard solution, and then this was that kind of refactored solution. So you can always see the solutions here. Awesome. Okay. So let's move on to useState. So hooks. Let's take a look at the lecture for hooks. Intro to hooks. So hooks were introduced in React version 16.8. You know, and it's not, everyone isn't fully adopting it yet. You know, maybe they're not on that particular version. Also, React itself, if I go just to the homework, just to read up on about React hooks, what they're suggesting is, just go here. Before you continue, note that hooks are completely opt-in. You can try hooks in a few components without rewriting existing code. They are backwards compatible. They don't contain any breaking changes. And they're available in 16.8. Okay. There's no plan on removing classes from React. There are use cases for using classes, and you'll see that a hook allows you to take a functional component and give it state. It also allows you to call some of the lifecycle methods, kind of like component did mount and component did update. We can use hooks to do that as well. I think there's also something in here where they say don't just start refactoring everything to use hooks. I think they're really specific. I don't know, when upgrading, don't forget, yeah. They do state in here, like, don't just jump in and just start converting everything to hooks. Don't do that. I think that might have been in the second article. I think it may have been in here, hooks at a glance. I know they definitely give back on page, state hooks. Yeah, maybe it's not. Somewhere in here they say, like, don't go out of your way and start refactoring everything, because that'd be crazy. Go back to your previous code. But they do suggest that you start kind of working with hooks if and when you can. Some people are just waiting for the next, like, stable version, you know, 16.9 or 17 to be like, all right, now we're ready for hooks. Okay. Nobody in their right mind just jumps onto the latest thing in production code. That's not always the best option. So let's take a look at hooks. So when we're talking about intro to hooks, this would have been how we would have created some sort of counter component, right? What you could just visually see here. There's state here with the account key set to 0. There's an increment method and a decrement method. One is incrementing. This should be decrementing, obviously. It's just a typo. And then there's a couple of buttons that call those methods, right? This code becomes that, right? And that, to me, is much more terse code to write and to look at, okay? So the fact that we can take these methods and make them smaller. Obviously, like this method, we could have put it on one line and made it kind of look like that. We didn't have to break it down into a second line. But it looks really terse. And the fact that I don't need to use the keyword class that extends React component. I'm just a functional component. That's really all it is. So when we are doing it, hooks can only be called within functional components. That's something we have to remember. You're not going to use hooks in a state-based component. You use state. You use set state in state-based components. This is just for a functional component. Okay. And the other thing just to kind of keep in mind is that they will re-render. If you update props or state in a functional component using hooks, it's going to re-render, right? Any changes to state cause a re-render. That doesn't change if it's a functional component that's using hooks or a class-based component that's using hooks. It triggers a re-render, okay? Now, just based on these two, like I kind of want to just jump in and kind of start working with hooks, right? So let's take a look here. I'm going to go back to, I know everyone misses it, the color switcher, right? I can't get enough of the color switcher. Sometimes people are like, do something else. And I'm like, why? Why would you want to do anything else? So I made just a few little enhancements to this color switcher here. You know what? We never changed the background color. That was the whole color switcher, right? Switch a color. So I added some functionality to do that. I also added some functionality that if I added a color, I would make it the active color. And I also added a double click that would remove the color. So, hey, we want to add and we want to remove. That's functionality that you're going to do to anything, to your to-do list. You probably want to do the same thing, which we did, but we never did it here. And so we can just still, add things at will, remove them at will. Okay? That's not the point of this lecture. You'll see it in action. But the idea for what we're going to be doing is adding hooks. And so the first place that I really want to start adding this hook is I'm going to go to form. Okay, so I'm going to go to the form component here. Okay, and I'm just going to collapse these so we can see that the form component is a class-based component. Now, hooks work with or are used in functional components, not class-based components. But this is where all that magic is happening. So if I do pink, it turns pink, and we have our handle change method that is actively capturing every keystroke. It's adding that captured data to the state to input, and when we click on submit, it then takes that input and sends that input up to the app, right? And then the app passes that data back down to the color list and the color list item, and hence we see our data, right? So the first thing that we would need to do, if you are refactoring, if you're not refactoring something and you're creating from scratch, then you would create a functional component. But in our instance, our first step is to refactor, refactor, right? Refactor the form, the class into a functional component, right? That's our first goal. So first things that I'm going to need to do is get rid of class form extends and just say function form, right? Function, capital, and we know that this takes some props, right? We're going to get a bunch of errors until we finish the refactor. I'm going to do this because I'm not going to do this in my function. So I'm just going to comment out a few things so we can refactor this using hooks. I'm going to go here. I'm going to kind of comment out that, getting rid of the this keyword, and I'm just going to delete that. So I don't have to comment out that. I'm going to comment out this dot set state. Once again, functional component doesn't have the keyword this, so I can't use that keyword. Functional component doesn't have render. It only has a return. So I get rid of the render keyword. And here all I have to do is get rid of the this keyword. Wherever I see it, here's this dot state dot input. And for this, I'm just going to put something like, I don't know, color for now. I'm going to put a placeholder. Okay. And then this looks like it should be good. Oh, because it says from when it should say for, right? All right. What did I do wrong here? E prevent, E dot target, const input, handle change channels. Oh, these have to be functions inside of it. Okay. So any methods that we had in a class base are now going to be converted over to just functions. That's really what a method is anyway, right? Just a function inside of a class. Okay. So now that we have this, the form's not going to work, obviously. If I type in anything, nothing's happening, right? Because I'm giving it a static value. All we're going to see here is color. We're not going to see anything. If I got rid of this, let me say, if I got rid of that, we'd see the placeholder add a color, right? No value, you get add a color. So we need to now implement hooks. Okay, so how do we use hooks? So the first thing that we're going to do is, I'm going to say import hooks, or import the useState hook. Now, there's a few different kind of hooks that we can use. And the first hook that we're going to work with is the useState hook. So there are several different hooks. Let me just see hooks at a glance. They give us the list of some of the hooks. I just want to see, do they use? Yeah, they have the useState. There's using effect hooks, and there's a few other types of hooks that we can use. So we're working with this use hook, or useState hook, this one right here. So I'm going to go back here. So we need to import the useState hook from React, right? So like we would have done with a component, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say useState, okay? And now everything works. I'm only getting this because it's saying, hey, we called it, but we never used it. Okay, so I'm going to take this state right now and convert it into a useState version of that. Okay, so let me do this. I'm going to keep that version so you have something to compare it to. Now, when we use useState, I'm going to do it the long way and then I'll do it the short way. Okay, so I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to say const, let's see, what do we want to call this? Const is our form. So use form state is equal to useState, and I'm just going to give it empty, empty string of text. Okay, so what this returns is going to be an array of things. It's going to have an array of things. So let me say, if I console log and say this is use form state. Let's do that. And let's see. It's a little slow today. Let me go to, let me open this up here so I have more space anyway. All right, better I open it up here. Okay, let's take a look. This is use form state, and look, it's an array of things, right? It's an array of, at this point in time, 4 separate things, okay?
I don't think this is what you're expecting it to be logging.
What's that?
I don't think that's what you expected to log because you didn't put it.
Oh yeah, I didn't put anything. Yeah, use form state. I just put the console log there. You're absolutely right. Okay. So now let me go here, and here's useFormState. This is what we wanted. So what we see that useFormState is showing two things. It's showing an array. And the first thing in the array is just an empty string, and the second is a function, okay? This empty string is indicative of this, okay? So when we create or we use useState, what it's going to do is take in a value that is going to take the place of this, right? So input was set to an empty string, and so we are going to create something that has both the value and a function that can update that value. Okay, so the two things in this array are the actual value that we're looking to update in state and the method that we use to target that thing that we need to update. So now that I have this, I have the useFormState, I am going to say const input is equal to useFormState, and I'm going to grab the first thing in there. And so that should be the empty string. And then I'm going to say const set input is equal to useFormState, and I'm going to grab the second thing in that array, which was the function. So in essence, this becomes the value. Okay, this is the value that we're looking to set or to manage, and this becomes the function that targets that specific value, okay? And it's going to be kind of a one-to-one relationship. So if we did have multiple key value pairs in state, what we could do is create individual useState methods that target each one of those. Okay, right now we just have one, so it's easy enough to create this. And so with this, I would be able to now update state using this particular method, the set input. And that's going to be kind of the semantic naming convention. You're going to see that used a lot, like set. Almost like set state, right? That's really what it's coming from. Set state is the method, and so we're kind of emulating that semantic naming convention. Now this happens to be kind of the long way of doing it, right? I had to create this const variable that returns back an array of two things, and then I pull the first thing out and I pull the second thing out. I don't really want to do that. That's just a lot of work to do. So a shortcut to do all of that would have been to do this. Here's our next option, is to just do const input set input, right? That's what we called it. And that's going to be equal to useState, okay? And by doing this, what does this look like? If we had to give this what's happening here a name, what does that look similar to? If I was to go back to, say, iStocks here, you see this, right? Am I not grabbing two things from React Router DOM doing this? So what does that look familiar? What do we call this? What's the naming convention there?
Destructuring.
Right, that's object destructuring. And so this would be what? What's the natural process? Array destructuring. Okay, so this is just array destructuring. It's an array. There's two things in there, and so we can elicit the values out of those based on their position. So when you do array destructuring, position is key. Okay, this input will be the first thing in the array. This set input will be the second thing in the array. Okay, I call this input, right? Input, okay. Versus using destructuring like this, it doesn't matter where the key route is in the object. As long as there is a key called route, I will find it. As long as there's a key called switch in the object, I will locate it. Not so for this. This is a position-based thing, okay? So now that I've been able to elicit a value of input set to a blank string and set timeout here also, okay, we're going to start using this, okay. I'm going to save this. I don't feel this thing should have errored out on me because it was just working, but it is erroring out. So we're in the form, right? So what happened here? Set input, timeout is useState.
You commented out use form state, but you're still trying to log it.
Ah, that's right. Thank you. So let me get rid of that. That's why. It's tiny little errors. Okay. So now I have this. And now I have something where input is set to an empty string. And you know, at least down here when I did value, I was like, all right, I'm going to set it to an empty string. But for now, I'm just going to do this, value or input. Okay. This should take us right back. Right. Input is an empty string right now as it is stored in our new useState state. Right. Okay. So that's how we create and define useState. The first key becomes the value, and the second one becomes the method that we want to use to update our thing in state. And these naming conventions are whatever you want to call. I could have called this anything I want. This could be called anything. They are up to you. However, useState, that name must be useState. There's no way around that. Okay. So the next thing that I want to do is, you know, if I type, nothing's happening here. I'm typing, right? Blah, 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 nothing's happening. And I have my state down here, right? So I have state here, and I don't want to use this dot set state anymore. I want to use this new set input. That's what I want to use. So it's as easy as this. So easy to use, okay? So this dot props. Let me just do that here. Set input, and what do you want to set? I want to set e.target dot value, right? That's what I want to set. So all you have to do is call the method, pass the method the value, and it knows to target this that value, right? This variable that we kind of created here, that it already knows that it's targeting this thing. We don't have to tell it that target that key like we would have to do in state like this. Hey, set state, make sure it's the input key that we're targeting, and here's the value. We don't have to do that anymore. And this should, if I was to start typing in, oh, what happened? Nope. This is input. Let me see what's happening here. It should have taken it. Let me save this. This is input. Oh, because I put it in the wrong place. Look at this. That's in handle submit. I should have put it here. Now I could do input right here. I could just comment this out. And now if I do red, it'll work, right? So it's a handle change that I wanted to target. Okay. Now I could take this back and say, hey, I'm going to give you the value of input, right? And let's see if this works. Okay, that works also. Even though input up here is a kind of global variable inside of this function, right? Accessible anywhere. Inside of here, this function, we're redefining this variable. And all we're doing is passing in a variable that has the value that we want. Okay, so it doesn't matter if we pass it in this, either target.value or input or whatever else, it does the thing. Okay. So now that we get it and I submit it, nothing happens, right? Because handle submit isn't doing its thing. And so we need to do two things here. The first thing that we're going to need to do is at least pass up that value that we've captured in input up to the onSubmitFromApp method that is responsible for doing the updating. Right? Now, the fact that this is a functional component, we don't use this anymore, and all we do is use props, right? So if I was to take this and put it here, that's step one. We know that there is no this anymore, and we're not using state. What are we doing? Just input. Because input is this value, and we know that handle change has updated that value. So on submit, all we'd have to do, boom, is do it. And it passes the value up. Now it doesn't clear this out, which is what setState was doing in here. It was clearing out the input because we don't want the leftovers of the color. We don't want the user to have to be like, all right, let me get rid of that and let me type pink. Oh, let me get rid of pink and let me type something else. That's just a tedious process for the user. So we go back to set input and we just set it to an empty string now. And now if we do this, that works, right? And we can still change the colors and everything, okay? So useState, pretty cool to work with, and it really does simplify your code or reduce the number of characters that you'd have to type in order to get your code up and running, right? I can just use functional components. I don't need to call the class keyword. And one of the other reasons for using functional components versus class-based components, does anyone know one of the other differences between using a class and a function in regards to JavaScript? I'm just curious if anyone knows that off the top of their head. Okay.
Classes are more resource intensive.
Yeah. Classes are more resource intensive, right? You're loading this, you're instantiating an instance of a class and you're like loading it into memory. In a function, you're not doing that. You're not instantiating a class of anything. It's just a function, right? And a function that in this instance, you know, I'd be hoisting it to the top. But even then, it's not the same level of resources that a class uses. And so they wanted to conserve on the resources being used and for performance of the app. And so this was the perfect combination. Let's allow everyone to use state within a functional component. It's just kind of the perfect marriage between the two. Okay. So the things just to keep in mind is when you do useState, the first value is that key of data that you're looking to keep track of, and the second one is the method. Okay, when you want to update that key, all you have to do is call the method and pass it a value. And it knows to always target that thing. Hands down, always. It'll never confuse it. Okay, and then you can just use it wherever you need to. Okay? Feeling good with useState? Right? Okay. How do we feel? Are there any questions, any lingering, like what just happened? No? Awesome. Okay. This is good news because you're going to be doing it with your to-do list. Okay. So let me show you the to-do list. I did just make a few little things here. Here's our to-do list. I know it works. Hey, look, test. The thing works. What I did add also, I'm trying to emulate with the color switcher, is the active thing has a border of green. So I've added some events like if I click on this, it makes it green because it's active. This one's active. If I click on it again, it deactivates that. So if you're curious, you can look at the code. You can kind of figure that out. I'm just, once again, just adding a few little additions. Feel free to investigate. If I delete, that still works. We haven't gotten around to the edit yet, but we're going to get around. Not today, but we will add the edit. That's just conditional rendering. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to the form and you're going to make the necessary changes to turn that form to use useState. Exactly what we did within the context of the to-do list. Okay. So if I had to say, Damola, how much time do you think that would take? 15? I love it. Okay.
Yeah, 15
awesome.
minutes.
15 minutes? Sweet. Connor, what about you? What do you think?
I think 15 works.
15 works? Sweet. Now, I know some of you, I was going to have everyone just kind of work on their own. I do know some of you work for the same company, and it was kind of expressive. We ever did pairs to be paired up. If you want, I can pair you up as well. So if that's something that you want, just reach out to me. I can put you into a breakout room with your coworker, okay? So I'm going to go to the breakout rooms. I will put everyone into an individual room right now, and if you want to be in the room with your coworker, just let me know and I'll gladly put you in. Okay, make co-host. I'm just making co-host. Okay, put you in the breakout rooms. It's 8:40, 8:55. I'm going to also put in Slack. Click on the thumbs up when you're done. But before I do that, let me Slack out our thing. All right, there's the code sandbox. So fork that and then click on thumbs up when you're done. Okay, and then I'll know you're done. And I'll do the breakout rooms and you're off. Oh, now you're off. Sweet. Recording? Yeah, I'm recording again. Okay.
Set input.
What's that? Okay. Looks good. All right. So once again, I was kind of one of those do what I did. And first thing would have been to do the conversion, right? Convert the thing into a functional component. Kind of once it's converted into a functional component, you could import useState, convert over your state, and then just start using your kind of set state method, whatever you decided to call it. And so here it was just set input, right? And then set input on the target, really identical to kind of what we did. I don't know if you had time. Oh, can I not hear you again?
No, we can hear you.
Okay.
Ooh, I'm not.
Okay. Yeah. Connor, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I just I said you're not sharing your screen, but I don't think you.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah. Let me share my screen then. There you go. If I'm not doing that, just let me know. If you Slack me, I may not look. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to assume most of you have this solution anyway. I'm going to Slack this out also because I forked over the one that I sent you. So this is that solution code just in case you need something to reference. Cool. Any questions on this? Like, we're going to use it one more time. What was the question?
Is there a time where like hooks are not necessary? Like when it's a good time and bad time not to use hooks?
So there's a few life cycle methods that hooks don't cover. So what we're just doing right now is using state, but when it comes to hooks, there are several other types of hooks that we can use. I was just kind of looking for the list of the hooks themselves. It's like, I don't think the documentation gives this to us on here. There's rules of hooks, breaking hooks. Let me see if introducing the hooks, if they show us all of the list of hooks. I don't see them showing us the list of hooks. Maybe it's the hooks home facts page. You don't really show us here as a native. No, they're not showing us the list of hooks. But hooks, there's several of them that we can use. We're not going to get into use effect today, but one of the reasons why you would have to use a class base is because there's going to be some life cycle methods that we don't or cannot get use of when we use useEffect. And useEffect is going to replace some of those life cycle methods similar to this. Component did mount and component did update. Okay, we did use component did mount. Does anybody remember what we used component did mount for?
when you load data from an API, if you didn't have data, you could do it at that point, forcing
Yeah. And it only runs one time, runs a single time. And so both of these methods, these lifecycle methods, can be incorporated as part of this use effect, right? And you see use state, use effect. And once again, we're going to cover this on Thursday, but we can do that. But there's other lifecycle methods that don't fall within the scope of use effect. Because they don't fall in that scope, we have to use a class-based component in order for those to take effect, in order for us to leverage. So there's just really going to be some one-offs that you would make the decision to use a class versus using a hook. Okay? Does that help it explain it, Demola? Is that good? All right. And I would have to take a look. I forgot the one that it doesn't cover just off the top of my head, but these are the three main ones, like components, did update, did mount, will unmount. But there's one or two that it does not. I forgot the ones that it doesn't. Sweet. Any other questions? Anything else? Okay. All right. So why don't we do this? It's 9 o'clock. Why don't we take our, I'm going to say 5-minute break, right? 5-minute break. As always, running short on time. It's 9 o'clock. Why don't we, I'm just going to make sure it's right on 9. Yeah. Why don't we come back at, say, 9:05. Cool? Awesome. I will stop my video. Okay. Let's give it another minute. I'm recording. Okay. And I'm going to now split off these two separate things using using state. Okay. Our new state. So, you know, I think I'll do this. I'll say use state, right? So I'm just going to import it first before I do all of this conversion. So I don't need app to be a class-based component. So I could say function app, right? It's still taking props in because index is passing it the colors array and a title. So it still needs to be that. I don't need state here. Once again, I'm going to just comment out wherever I'm referencing state so that that doesn't conflict with me. This also here. I'll get it up and working just so that I can get something, and then I'll take it from there. So I don't need this console log here. This is main background. I'm actually going to take this for now, and I'm just going to put it over here. I'll explain what's happening with this with the styles, and just going to get rid of this so this doesn't keep causing errors, and I'll import it later. This would be title. This will be handle submit, handle change color, handle that. And then this colors array here, for now, just so that it stops screaming at me, I'm just going to say props. And that'll go. And then I just have to say const, and get rid of render and return. And what else am I doing wrong here? Handle change color, handle remove color. Oh, because I got rid of the H here by accident. There we go. Just want to make sure it works. That's it. Okay. Now that it works, I'm going to replace this state with two other kinds of state. So I did have colors array, and I had this active color also. And that active color was what I was using to know that this was the active color. And that actually was what I was using here, this .state.active color. And I was just giving the main div, this whole main div, a background color of that particular color. Okay, so I'll re-add that in just a moment. So here, let's start with the colors array. So I'm going to say const, right? And I'm going to say an array colors array and set colors array. Okay, and that's going to equal use state props dot colors array. Okay, because we're getting colors passed down to us. So I'm going to use props and set it. So now colors array is that array. Now I'm also going to say const. We can say, you know, active color, and we could say set active color, right? And that's use state. And what is it? It's just going to be a color. So for right now, just for the sake of it, I'm going to set it to be white. Okay. Let me see, active color, active color. Oh, use state. Did I misspell this? Const active color is equal to use state. Oh, these are curly braces. These need to be parens. That's fine. Okay. Cool. So now I have this set. Now that I actually have this, I could use this down here and set it on main for the background. But we'll get back to that. Okay. So now that I have this set to white, just to set it to something. Let's go down here, and so let's just cover what we just did, right? We just split state into two separate things. And each one of them now is controlled by their own method. This particular method and this particular method are the ones that are going to control their corresponding version of the state keys here. And so by defining them this way, we will have two separate methods that can execute them, right? So here, handle submit, same thing with handle submits. All we do when we submit is here's the colors array, and it is taking in the previous state of colors, and it is going to add the color. So how do we do that? Well, we can say, what is it? Set color array, right? So set colors array, right? And then we are going to pass it an array because it does take in an array. And we can say ... colors array, which is this, and we're spreading it. And we're just going to add color. Okay, so we're still going to use the spread operator. It's the same context here. We don't need a previous state. We're just taking the array and spreading it open and then giving this, and then it will assign this value to colors array once it's done. Okay, so I got the handle submit, so that should work. Handle color change. Once again, this active color is color. I'm going to just update this to be, we'll hold off on the active color. I'll do the first method, this set colors array first. That's the one that we want. And then I'll set the active color. So here, let's see, this is const array. We're looping over the colors to return where the color's not. All right, so this would be the handle remove. If I double click on this, it should remove the item from the array. Okay, that was the idea of this. So actually, let me see. If I was just to do this right now, let me just see, does it work? If I just add something, right, pink, right, I'm capturing it, and I'm submitting it, but it's not updating. And that's because the colors array here is static. It's set to props. It's not set to the colors array here. So I'm going to go back here and get rid of that. And now we're setting it to the value that's in state. So if I do pink and I hit enter, it does, right? I mean, if I click on it, nothing happens. And if I double click on it, nothing happens. That's because that's coming from these two. Handle change color would set the active color to be something. So I'm going to go here and say, all right, let's try that one. Here I have active color, right? Active color, and then set active color. So I'm going to go to this and say, okay, set active color. What do you want it to set it to? Well, I don't know, whatever the color is. Right? Whatever comes in, set the active color to that. And then I'm going to go down here, and for main, I'm going to re-add a style. Now, we haven't really done this quite often, but we can do inline styles. And when we do inline styles, we need double curly braces. And that's because the first set of curly braces, internal, is to wrap the object of CSS properties. And then the second one is because we're doing JSX. So in here, I'm just going to say background. And then I'm going to say active color. Okay? Now, if I was to click on this, we would change it, right? So if I do handle color change, that should kick it off, and we should get the colors, right? The colors are changing now because I'm clicking on it. That method is being passed up, right? That click event is being passed down all the way to color list item. And color list item, when it's clicked, is lifting state up. So I'm just kind of handling what's up here. And then remove color. Well, remove color is going to be like the same thing. I need to remove that particular color. So we're not using state anymore. We're using colors array, right? Okay, and so it would be like const colors array is equal to colors array.filter and remove the color. Let's just see if this works because these two are named the same. And I think that's going to be an issue. So our method to update state is set colors array, right? So I'm going to say set colors array. Okay, and I need to give it an array, and I could say colors array, right? That's this. Let's see if that would work. Nope, double clicking on it doesn't remove it. I think we'd see an error here too. We definitely see some sort of error about, let me say, oh, I have a lot of errors here. Just keeps going. Unexpected token. Oh, that was before. Let me try doing this again. Let me just, oh, here we go. I want to trigger the array, so the error. Can I read property filter of undefined? Can't do it. So if I want to do this, I can't use the same naming convention. So color array, let's see, colors array is equal to color array. I just have to give this another name. Colors array, remove colors array, or new colors array. How about this? New colors array. And I could say new colors array. And that should do it, right? Boop, boop. They just can't be the same name. Okay, they were before, that worked, but I can't do it now. And so now I can add the color, it adds it, change the background, and remove it simultaneously. So what we're doing here is we're doubling up on state, okay? 2 individual ones, and they're managing their corresponding one. Okay, and I'm starting with it being white, but I could have started it with the first one, which would have been white anyway. I could have done this, props dot colors array, and set it to be the first one, and that would have been also. If I set it to be the second one, we should get gray, right? Second one should be blue, okay? So we're just reusing the same approach we did, but now we're just doubling up on state, okay? That shouldn't be too hard, right? Too difficult to kind of re-implement.
So, Joe, is there no state in any of these applications?
Well, state is taking a new form now, right? I mean, there is state, but it's in this new hook version of it, okay? So what I would suggest when you're making the decisions now for your apps, obviously when you go back to where you work, you have to see if they are using hooks. They may not be using hooks. That may just be something like, I learned it, but I have no opportunity to use it at work. But if when you are designing your final project, consider using useState anywhere where you have state. Okay, anywhere where you are planning on using state, and unless you hit that one lifecycle method that we haven't even really covered, that I can't even imagine you hitting, use it, and I don't think you should have a problem. Okay, I think it should be fluid.
Is state in this case whole application level and not component level?
It still is at the component. I mean, this is a functional component, right? We're still defining it within the component. So state should live. It didn't change the fact that form needed its own state, right? And this is how you're going to see forms. Forms are going to like control themselves because of that handle change method, right? Because we need to like capture every keystroke because this is a controlled form. Being a controlled form means we want to capture every keystroke, and possibly, we're not doing it, but we'd want to match it to some criteria, right? So as they're typing in their password, we could be like, oh, your password is getting stronger and stronger, and that little line goes from red to yellow to green. That's a perfect example for a controlled component, and so a form is always going to do that. But form has a state, right? But the state has been now converted to useState. Our app, it also has state, but it's been converted to using useState. It's still the same thing. It's just a different version of writing it. It's the new chic way. That's like saying, I don't think I have any more functional components, but that's like saying when we first did this, and I did something like this, I'm just going to add some comments here. When we created a component, I was like, hey, constructor, does anybody remember like the constructor? Constructor, and it would be like, oh, props. And then we did something like super, and it was props. And then we did state, and we're like, hey, this dot state was equal to, like, that's how we originally did it, right? And I could say just color or white, something like this dot state was equal to an object, and we would do like, I don't know, active color was, white. We originally did it like this. And then we were like, hey, who the hell wants to do that? We don't have to do that. We could just say state, right? And do the same thing. All hooks are the next iteration of that process. That's really all it is. This is just the next iteration. Okay? That's an answer. Cool. Any other questions? Cool.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Lifting state, how does that sort of operate with this hook type thing?
So lifting state is doing the same thing. It's almost like nothing else has changed because, in all honesty, when I click on these colors, where is that coming from? How do I get the click of that color all the way up to here? Now, just think what I'm clicking on. I'm clicking on the little color list item. Right, and we could go back to the schematics where it was like the architecture where we have app, and app is split into a form and to a color list, and then color list is rendering color list items. So if I go to a color list item, look, I have a click, an on click. This on click is like, hey, when you click, call this function. Okay, handle color change. Well, I know that this color list item is being rendered from color list. So I'm going to go to color list and I'm like, color list. Oh, look, handle change color. That's where I'm executing the method and I'm passing in the color. This D represents the color to a method that's being passed down to color list called handle change color. And then I go up to app. And then if I look here, I will see app is passing down that method. It doesn't change lifting state at all. You still need to pass down the method. The method needs to be executed. That execution passes the data up here, and then we just update state like we would normally do. Okay? It's just really an easier way of writing it. You know, once my day class learned about hooks, and they worked on their projects, that's really all they did was hooks. Everyone was like, why would I use class-based components anymore? Like, there's no reason to except for that one tiny little kind of anomaly. And off the top of my head, I'll get it next time. But what I did find was that reference to all of the new things of hooks. There's useState, there's useEffects, and there's useContext. These are the new ways of using these types of things. UseContext is just an advanced concept of context. And we're going to go into that also. Context is something we're going to go to, and that's the ability to pass data down to child components without passing it through each individual component along the React architecture. Like I could get something from here to here, passing down through 5 different components without saying, oh, I got to redefine this prop again, right? That's a tedious process. We don't want to do that. So these are some of the advanced ways of doing it. And then they have all of these additional hooks. Things like use reducer and use callback and memo and use ref. There's a lot to hooks. We're just going to, once again, skim the surface of it because that's all the time that we really have to jump into these advanced concepts. Okay? To answer your question, Joey? Sweet. Anybody else? Going once, going twice? All right, so you're going to do it with the to-do list. You have 2 things in to-dos, list items and active list items. And once again, active list items is just providing that functionality. Okay, I click on something, it's active. So this active list items is not happening here, right? It's happening all the way down here, okay? This thing, and I've already added the logic. All you have to do is set state for the 2 things. You don't have to go anywhere outside of app. You need to do nothing outside of app, okay, in order to get this to work, okay? Sweet. So I'm going to give you, say, 15 minutes. I think you did the other one really quick, about 15 minutes. I'll give you another 15 minutes. You already have your previous solution, right? And I've already refactored the previous one anyway, right? I already redid it, so you already have what I slacked out earlier. I'm going to say click on thumbs up when done, and I'll put here a thumbs up. 15 minutes, bring you back. We'll cover the final project material that I want to get you started thinking about. I'll create the breakout rooms. Once again, I'll put you back into the breakout rooms together with those that had asked for it. And I'll open up the breakout room. So it's 9:33, probably about 9:48. Okay, I'll give you. If we do it sooner, awesome. And open up the rooms. Resume recording. Okay, here we go. So here's the app. Where's the to-do list? Here we go. Here's the to-do list. So the first thing that I would have done, once again, is convert it to a functional component. And that means, a lot of commenting things out and maybe even removing things. So I could get rid of state here. I commented out just to have the placeholders so I could go back to them. Change it to a functional component, give all of your methods consts, defining them using the const keyword, comment out anywhere where there's anything that's this.state, comment it out, get rid of it. Anywhere where there was the keyword this, get rid of that too. Just try to get it to a working version. Get it up and running, see the thing, awesome. Then go back and say, all right, now that I have it, let me, kind of import state here, and then take these two key value pairs that were stored in state and split them up into their own use state methods. So this is one for the list items, and this is one for the active item. Okay. And for this particular scenario, I just defined test to be by default. So if I add test is here, but everything else works, right? Except the double click. Okay, no biggie. And then I went to handle submit. Handle submit had this, had this set state, prev state, list items, spread open the previous list items and add the thing. And I did it in one line. Okay, you could do it in one particular line. Then handle remove items. I still went through the same process. I removed the one that needs to be removed, right? And that should work here, right? Delete. And then just set list items to that particular array of list items. Handle active list item, just give it the name of the thing. I'm actually passing in the name of the to-do, and that's what it's using to set this. And set a test, it's going to set it to whatever it is. I could have just set this to, I'm actually just going to set this to an empty string. That should still work too, right? If I do add test, it will work too. Okay, and then go down here and just remove the this from all of those methods. Pass the array now of list items. Before it was this.state.list items. Now it's just list items, and the active list item is active list item. That gets passed down. Whatever you click on, boop, gets passed down. And then there's some like conditional logic that's like, hey, if you're the one that was clicked, I'm going to give you a class. And so you could take a look down here and see that it's given a class. This is something that you would have seen in the films lab also. Okay. Cool. Any questions? Do we have any questions on it? Okay. Once again, it was the same thing we did before. We just kind of extended it, required a bit of refactoring. And I knew, Gustavo, you had asked some questions about like what's happening behind the scenes and stuff. Most I could say is like magic. Could we reproduce this and create our own little functions that emulated it? Sure. A lot of the times when I am teaching just straight up JavaScript, proceeding to the next unit being React, I kind of do things that emulate React and build the functions and build something that's called set state. And then so now the next time I would create something that would return back two things and then use those two things to emulate what we're doing, to give you a kind of a behind the scenes. But what it's doing, I'm just assuming it's doing what I think it's normally doing in JavaScript. It's just targeting the thing, updating it. How it updated state in the past and then caused a re-render, I have no idea. So it's like, that was the thing. You update state, it does its thing. I didn't need to understand that. That's declarative programming. There's imperative and declarative programming, and declarative is where they extrapolate some of the functionality and you just kind of tell it what you need it to do, versus imperative, whereas you have to tell it what to do every step of the way. It's the difference between using a for loop, which is imperative, and you have to tell it everything to do within the for loop, versus a map, which it already knows how many times to loop, when to stop. Doesn't need to be told. It knows. Okay. Any questions? No, we're hitting the time. Okay, I'm just going to share this. You can take a look at it and we can talk about it more in the Trello board. I do have this final project discussion. There is a final project prompt here. You can read through it. The requirements really are just use components and state. Use React Router, include a nav bar, and like use ES6. Don't forget about, I didn't put hooks here, but I'm going to assume you're going to use hooks now that you know it. And that's really it. And then it's up to you to build whatever you want at that point in time. Here's some you can rebuild other sites like Airbnb. Maybe you want to get the look and feel of Airbnb. Maybe you want to import data using an API. Awesome. I also put here some of my previous student projects from my day class. These are kind of the best of class projects right up here. These are just like from previous cohorts. So these are several different ones. And if you took a look at, say, this Dungeons and Dragons, the student is importing an API for Dungeons and Dragons and created this. This took a lot of time on the front end. So if you're not good with HTML and CSS, well, then you're not going to really do this, or you're not going to make it look like that. They spent a lot of time doing this, and they even have a search bar, and you can search for them. So, you'll have to apply your JavaScript skills to this as well. It's not just React. This is JavaScript. How do you filter through something? That was a really good project. This one for stocks was also another good one. Here, let me find the most active ones. Oh, cool. All stocks. And then I can favorite some stocks. If I click on this, it favors them. And if I go to my list, I now see the ones that I favorited. If I click on it, they disappear. If I click on a stock, I see it. This is using an API also. So feel free to look at their code. I don't want to hide this stuff from you. I want you to learn. So look at their code. Look at their code pens. Go through them. See, try to make sense of it. Don't copy and paste it. I mean, I'm going to know it because I helped them with these projects. So, but if you have any questions, just let me know, and especially if you want to import an API. Just reach out. Me and Abdul are here. We'll gladly help you provide the advice and guidance in working on this. We'll talk more on Thursday because coming up in the upcoming weeks, there's going to be deliverables. I'm going to want to start seeing some progress on these, and do you have an architecture? What are you looking to build? Do you even have a mock-up, a wireframe of it? What are you looking to build so your eyes are shooting towards something versus I don't know, I'm just going to throw some components and see what happens. It's not a successful approach. Cool. Any questions? I know it's 10:02. I don't want to keep anybody. Awesome. I'll post the recording tomorrow as always, and we're going to continue hooks on Thursday using use effect. So if you want to read up on that, you can read up on that as well on the React side. Cool. Sweet. All right, team. I will see you on Thursday. Next week on Thursday.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Well, exit tickets too. I know it's a big ask, but it takes you a minute.
Joe, what lesson number are we on? I keep forgetting.
We are on, I believe this is lesson number 11. Oh, right here. Oh, no, it's not right here. So this is going to be 11, right? Because we're in week 6. Yeah, so this is class 11. Awesome. Thanks, Megan. I fixed the tickets last week. Some people thought it was 7, some people thought it was 8. But. Cool. All right. I'll catch everybody on Thursday. Ciao.
Thank you. Good night.